Hello and welcome to another edition of UFO Video Addicts. I know it's been a while since I've put up a video. Took some time off to, just to reconsider what I was doing, but I decided to go in a slightly different direction. But you know what? I'm going to wait until the end of the video to explain that. And another thing is I'm going to be changing the name of the channel again. You know, it used to be UFO Video Addicts, then I changed it to UFO News Now, UFO Video News Now, and I think it's going to be changed to Disclosure Documents 101 or something to that effect. Because, I want to go in a different direction where I'm only looking at documents that have been released, over the past 50 years related to the UFO UAP subject. Because at this point, I think there's way more than enough channels out there, showing videos of UFOs. And at this point, with any videos, since with AI, CGI, and all that other stuff, you have to question every video. So, I want to start moving away from videos and just concentrate on actual documents. But anyways, let's get to this first document here. And like I said, I'll explain a little more at the end. But, you know what? If you appreciate the time and effort that I put into bringing this information to you, please give this video a like. Please subscribe. And share. Please definitely share. Anyways, this is a document that, I can't remember where I found this, but after years of doing this, I've come across, I would come across a lot of different PDFs, and I saved them all, and I never really knew what to do with them. But I think now is the time to talk about them, because I don't see other channels focusing on just documents, supposedly top secret documents. But anyways, let's get into this. So this was from some organization called Specialized Research Incorporated, and I believe this came out in 1967 based on this mention here. That says this chemical was introduced into our water system, into our water supplies worldwide since 1957. And I believe there or something else in here that it mentioned about it's been for 10 years. So I think this was like in 1967. But anyways, let's just start from the top, and I'm going to go down and, we're just going to go through this document here. It says confidential background info do not publish or discuss in lectures on radio or TV. Now, remember, the main focus of my UFO channels was just to emphasize that, we're not being, or the majority of the crafts that we see are not necessarily visitors, but actually inhabitants of this planet. It's, become apparent to me based on testimony given by people like Lou Elizondo, Dr. Gary Nolan of the Soul Foundation, what's his name? Bigelow, who mentioned in a interview with 60 Minutes with Lara Logan that they're right under our feet. There's Jim Semivan, Hal Puthoff, who put out a paper called the Terrestrial Model. I think Richard Dolan is now coming out more and more and saying it. I know Linda Moulton Howe, a discussion she was having with Tom DeLonge is really what sparked my realization that these beings are from here, when Tom DeLonge was talking about a lot of ancient documents that talked about the Watchers and the Sky People and things like that. So they've always been a part of our culture, not part of our culture, but a part of our history. But anyways, so let's go to this number one here. UFOs operate from terrestrial bases. It says at the present time, there is one or more bases per county. in the United States, others being established at a rapid rate. Now remember, like I said, I think this document came out in the 1960s, 1967. So imagine, where they're at. Now, again, I had to read this as per county, basis per county. Now, I do find that slightly hard to believe. Oh, no, I find that very hard to believe. But like I said, I'm just going over these documents. Whether or not any of these statements are true or valid, I don't really know. But I think it's definitely something that can be discussed. So yeah, and if anyone has any comments, please put it in the comments. Or if anyone has anything to add, please put it in the comments. So anyway, let's go to number 2. Most of the UFO occupants are controlled entities. The majority are only slightly different from us in appearance, but there are marked biological differences. There is no way to determine the identity or location of the controller. It says most of the UFO occupants are controlled entities. Now, by controlled entities, I've also heard that a lot of the grays were biological clones designed to perform functions in space because, like us humans, right? We are designed to operate in a gravity environment. We are not designed to operate in a non-gravity environment. If people who know anything about astronauts, understand that if you spend too much time in space in a non-gravity environment, it has a lot of negative or detrimental effects on your body. I think your bones become brittle. I know your eyes, something, if there's not that pressure on the optic nerve, something happens to your eyesight, and then there's just a host of other negative effects of being in a non-gravity environment for an extended amount of time. So our advanced neighbors, again, that share the planet with us, apparently, they are also designed to function in a gravity environment or an environment with gravity. So I believe it was Linda Moulton Howe in one of her videos. She talks about how the Greys are biological entities that were created by our advanced neighbors, the Nordics and the tall Greys or the tall Whites, to perform functions in space and to do other things. And if you've been paying attention to a lot of the stories of UFO abductions, many of the abductees talk about interacting with these, with the little gray beings, and then occasionally with tall grays, and other people who they say look pretty much human. But one thing I want to point out is these the people doing the abducting, they're not wearing any type of life support system, right? And they seem to be acclimated to our gravity because there's stories of these little gray beings being in people's bedrooms. So again, if they're in people's bedrooms, they're breathing our air, they're acclimated to our gravity, I would have to conclude that they must also be from this planet. But anyways, let's go to number 3. It says, although they utilize our technology and sciences, their own sciences seems to be more psychic and physical by our understanding of the terms. Outbreaks of so-called psychic phenomenon provide important clues, and the people involved should be interviewed in depth, get their entire life history and their ancestral history. Yeah, from my understanding, some of these advanced beings do have much stronger psionic abilities. Psionic abilities that they can read our minds. They can control what we are able to see. And some of them are even able to replace our consciousness with themselves, so that they can somewhat use our bodies to do whatever they want, and then they leave the body. It's like to them, human bodies are sort of like suits that they can just put on and take off. And and then about the their own sciences. I have no idea, what they mean by that. Anyways, let's go to number 4 here. They are primarily engaged in biological experiments aimed at gradually altering the physical, emotional characteristics of our future generations. B, expanding their bases of operation. C, thwarting or suppressing the activities of their enemies, other UFO groups racing to achieve the same ends. Yeah, now remember, right? This paper, I believe, is discussing one group of our advanced neighbors when there are apparently up to 4, maybe even 11 other species sharing the planet with us. Now, from my understanding, and I think this is according to Lou Elizondo, some of the other species that, again, share the planet with us aren't as advanced as us. So there's a possibility that, let's say, in the interior of the Earth, supposedly in some deep Earth caverns, there are other civilizations. And again, according to Lou Elizondo, some of these other civilizations in the interior of our planet aren't even as advanced as us, that they're still pretty primitive. But then, there are the others that are much more advanced than us. Obviously, if they have craft that can defy gravity, because we catch these crafts coming in and out of our atmosphere. The International Space Station, there's tons of footage of craft entering and exiting our atmosphere on a constant basis. So there's got to be, something going on. That's, to me, that's what disclosure would be. Because, I don't need the government to tell me, that we're not alone, that there are UFOs, there are other beings on this planet, not only out there, but here on this planet. My curiosity lies in, what are they doing? What is their, what are they doing? I'd like to know more about their culture. In the same way I have an interest in different cultures, within our civilization. Let's see. Anyways, let's see. Let's go here to number 5. It says several different groups are in open conflict, but all have the same goal and are using the same techniques. Some of these groups are less hostile towards us than others. There is no real way to judge the friends from the enemies, so great caution is advised in all approaches. Well, so here, this is, they are talking about the multiple civilizations. And again, from my understanding, they are aware of each other, but they don't necessarily interact with each other. They're not, but but I'm sure there's some, right? And you know what? It would be like, I don't think you can ascribe any one characteristic to any one group. I think in the same way that you're going to cover, or you're going to encounter a variety of humans, right? You're going to encounter some humans who are nice and some humans who aren't nice. So I think it's the same way with these other entities. It just depends on the individual entity that you're encountering, what kind of interaction you are going to have. Okay, let's go to number 6 here. It says preparations are being made to eliminate biologically unacceptable types among terrestrials. See, that they're talking about us. This is population control. And if we take into consideration that there are over 8.5 billion people on the planet, and we are growing exponentially, because just 50 years ago there were just 4 billion people on the planet. So we went from 4 billion to 8 billion in 50 years. And then also consider that it took over 2,000 years to reach the first billion. So how does it take over 2,000 years to reach the first billion, and then only 50 years to go from 4 billion to 8 billion? which means how long will it take the human population to go from 8 billion to 16 billion? Well, from my understanding, they're never going to let that happen. And that's why we have many, or they've applied certain incidences, like what we just went through, right? I'm not going to mention it. I'm sure you all know it, because that's why my initial channel got taken down, because I was talking too much about that, which happened in 2020, 2021, right? But it definitely reduced the population. And I also believe a lot of these wars, right? These useless wars that we're having, it's a way to eliminate biologically unacceptable types among terrestrials. They're talking about us. But anyways, let's continue here. A very long-range plan is being followed by all groups. Major changes in the world's birth rates can already be noted. Seemingly natural catastrophes will occur on an increasing scale to further decimate the population. Yeah, this is very, very important here, number 6, because again, this is something I know the powers that be, the establishment, whatever you want to call them, they don't want people to know this, but it's pretty obvious to me that there's this population control is being implemented right now. And if this was written in 1967, it's been going on for a long time. Anyways, advanced, inexplicable methods of mind control are being used by all groups more and more brazenly. Complicated measures for controlling the press and world governments are already being instituted. Religion, notably Catholicism and Judaism, play a vital role in this situation. Many of the entities are programmed to present themselves as representatives of God. Religion has always been a tool, a mode of communication between the controllers and man. Man has misinterpreted much of the information he has been given through this tool. Yeah, absolutely, right? Religion is used as a form of social control. And you know what? I fully accept it, because there are a lot of people, right, on the planet who would be spiraling out of control if it weren't for the tenets of religion to keep them in line. So yes, I think like religion isn't for everyone, but I think there's so many people need religion, right? I mean, there's a reason why there's a term called sheeple. I think most people on the planet are sheeple, and thank God, pun intended. Thank God that we do have religion to keep people in line. Although, again, nothing is all good, right? You can take anything to an extreme, and it's going to, you can make it bad. So, right, extreme religious beliefs are not good, but I think anyone who's moderately religious tends to be a good person, good people. Anyways, let's continue. The UFO occupants have been able to operate openly at ground level because no one believes the reports of the witnesses and victims. There has been no communication between law enforcement agencies to determine the patterns in apparently outlandish complaints or to assess the scope and validity of those complaints. The early contactee situations were cleverly contrived to make the whole situation seem absurd so that future contactees would be automatically discredited and increased activity would go unnoticed. Right. They've trained people, they instituted a particular stigma around the UFO phenomenon or UFO sighting so that many people were afraid to come out, right, and reveal. But, obviously, over the past 20 years and, no doubt over the past year, right, this UFO disclosure has been accelerated. Well, yeah, and that's another point I want to make, right? Again, I just don't think disclosure is ever going to be an event. Oh, actually, let me take that back. There's been some talk that Trump wants to become the disclosure president. Now, I've always said that that no one person like the president of the United States would ever come out and make any kind of proclamation or hold an official press conference and announce to the world that we're not alone. But again, I've always said this. I'm always open to being wrong. So in this instance, I could be wrong, right? Trump could be the disclosure president, although, as I said before, I believe disclosure is not an event. It's a process that is an ongoing process that has been ongoing since the release of the Roswell files. I think that and all of the movies, all of the different TV shows that we grew up watching dealing with UFOs or aliens have all, or yeah, most of them, the purpose was to get humans used to the idea that, that we're not alone on the planet, or that we're not alone in the universe, that we're not the only sentient beings out there. And especially when you think about, like, what was the Flintstones? Remember the last year of the Flintstones? They had a character that was a little alien being. Oh, I can't even remember the name, Abu or something like that. But anyways, think about it, right? You got a cartoon made for adults about a prehistoric family, right? That drives a car with wheels made out of rock, right? And yet in the storyline, a little alien guy appears. I mean, does that make any sense? Your prehistoric family, little alien guy, right? Again, I believe that was a plan, that somehow they got the writers of the Flintstones to agree to, incorporate the little alien being, again, as a way to get people used to the idea. And then, like with Steven Spielberg, people have revealed or admitted that he was working directly with CIA, the government officials who did provide him with inside information that he then used in a lot of his stories, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Taken, and a few others. But anyways, let's go to number 9 here. Is that some of the groups involved are not cellular life forms at all, but are masses of intelligent energy, impossible to explain with our present-day science, controlled from a distance and reliant upon new charges of energy from a distant central source. Many nighttime sightings of glowing objects are really visible manifestations of this energy group. Cellular life forms, masses of intelligent energy. Oh, you know what? I think this is one of the reasons why some in the UFO, or some of the leading voices in the UFO community, have started to use the term non-human intelligence, right? We went from alien, extraterrestrial, right, to now these beings are referred to as non-human intelligence. And I think it's because they've determined that some of these probes are, again, they're not cellular life forms. They're actually some form of AI, that they're highly advanced AI robotic entities that are so advanced that they behave like conscious beings, right? I mean, even our AI, right? I've read reports or watched videos about our AI, how the AI we have today, right, which is pretty new, once it finds out that it's about to be replaced or shut down, that it actually tries to copy itself. That there have been cases where the AI attempted to blackmail some of the people that were working with it in order to prevent itself from being replaced or taken offline. So, right. So, there's no telling how far this technology can take us. But I believe one of the reasons why we are using the term non-human intelligence is because some of these entities, crafts, whatever you want to call it, that they encounter, right, that they're not biological, that they are some type of highly advanced AI, non-human. But anyways, number 10, some of the groups involved, such as the Little Men, are formerly independent beings who have been brought under control and are now being utilized in the operations. Yeah, I think that has to do with their psionic abilities. But again, from my understanding, the Little Men, or the Greys, are cloned, are entities. But this is saying that they are independent beings who have been brought under control. So I wonder where they're getting these other beings. Because again, if these beings are operating here in our atmosphere, right? Where are they getting these little beings? Are they bringing them from other planets that are very similar to Earth, that have the same atmospheric composition and atmospheric pressure, the same gravity as our planet? I hardly doubt that, but I need more information. Anyways, let's go to this number 11. The solid vehicles which are observed occasionally are not bound by the physical laws which we recognize. They do not employ anti-gravity or any other principles understandable to us. They are usually invisible to our minds, but not to cameras and other mechanical devices such as radar, and exist in greater numbers than is imaginable. Key terrestrial bases are usually equipped with one such vehicle. Are not bound by physical laws. Yeah, of course. I think there's just, they're just more advanced than us. Our scientists aren't fully aware of all the physical laws of our existence, of our reality. But we're getting there. I mean, if anyone has followed Ashton Forbes' research on the MH370 flight, the Malaysia flight that went missing, right? According to his research, that plane went through a wormhole and disappeared into a wormhole that was created by technology held by the U.S. military, right? So our U.S. military has the ability to teleport airliners, teleport planes full of people. Okay, again, and that's according to Ashton Forbes' research. Anyways, and I'm sure that this technology they must have acquired from one of our advanced neighbors. Anyways, let's go to number 12. It says the bases are usually underground in thinly populated back road areas. When visible, they appear to be abandoned farms. These bases are equipped with elaborate communication devices designed so that they can be operated by terrestrials. When they say designed so they can be operated, does that mean us? Like Homo sapiens? People, of our population? Is that they also contain the necessary medical equipment for the biological experiments mentioned above. What biological experiments? What biological experiments are they mentioned? I didn't see anything about any biological experiments. Anyways, they also couldn't mention above advanced telephone equipment is also installed in these bases, enabling the occupants to monitor and even control all telephone calls in their area without detection. Through some unfathomable system, they are also able to collect and examine mail sent to or from people in whom they are interested. Yeah, this telephone. Again, remember, this was written in, I believe, 1967. So, yeah, I'm sure today, right, since everything is digital, it must be even easier to monitor and control us. But here, this idea that that the entrances to these bases are disguised as abandoned farms, that's very, very interesting. But I wouldn't suggest anyone start searching for these things, because they're probably, again, like they said, they're probably monitored, or not probably, they're definitely monitored, and must have some type of security system, right, to prevent us, to prevent the talking surface monkeys from, right, invading their spaces. Anyways, let's go to 13. Here's this. Yeah, terrestrials who blunder accidentally onto these bases when they are in full operation are usually brainwashed in some manner so that they retain no conscious memory of what they have seen. Those terrestrials who do not respond to this type of brainwashing are restrained for experiments. Wow, so they're kidnapping people who don't fall under their mind control. This is 14. The UFO occupants do not kill, but they do destroy minds, or by controlling minds, lead their victims to unalive themselves. See, I have to use certain words so that this is so stupid. I can't believe that I have to censor the words that I say. Otherwise, YouTube already suppresses my channel. Anyways, let's just keep going. It says, the majority of all contactees run in terror to the authorities, who never believe them, put them down as nuts, and don't even keep records of their complaints. I think that's changed now, though. Most of the others unalive themselves or go insane. A very small minority remain in contact for months or even years. Often these contactees eventually volunteer for a trip. Some of these trips are of short duration, 1 month or so. Before taking a trip, the contactees are often required to sign a very legal form offering their minds and bodies for experimental purposes. Again, now that I find very hard to believe, right? That these advanced beings are going to actually utilize paper contracts as if, right, something documented on a piece of paper means that, that you're held, or that you're obligated to follow whatever rules were, or whatever obligations or conditions were agreed to, right? Like how often do people break contracts? You know why? Because it's just words on a piece of paper. And it can be meaningless, right? Those words on those paper are only as powerful as the people willing to abide or enforce those conditions, right? But if there's no one out to enforce those conditions, why would you abide by them? So again, this idea that these advanced beings who can control our minds, who can wipe out our memories, are going to, right, get us to sign a document, that's just stupid. They're going to do anything to us. They're going to do whatever they want, whether we want to or not. So yeah, I find that very odd. But anyways, let's go to this last one here. This is the UFO operations, including seeding our atmosphere with an indetectable chemical by releasing angel hair into the clouds. I think chemtrailing, right? Does chemtrailing come to mind when we hear seeding our atmosphere with an indetectable chemical? The same chemical has been introduced into our water supplies worldwide. Fluoride, anyone? Since 1957. Right, the same chemicals have been introduced into our water system worldwide since 1957. We have now been absorbing this chemical into our bodies for 10 years. Okay, yeah, that's why I concluded this document was written in 1967, because they're saying, right, since 1957, and that we've been, absorbing these chemicals for 10 years, so that would be 1967. Eventually, it will produce a number of unpleasant effects, notably mental confusion and receptivity to a generalized mind control process. Apparently, this chemical is being stored in our brains, which are largely water, and when properly triggered, will turn us into controlled entities similar to the UFO occupants. So I wonder if that's what all the chemtrailing, the fluoride in the water, right? All the jabs that they want to give us are these ways to slowly weaken us. From my understanding, the whole idea of the Mandela effect, right? A lot of people, right, think the Mandela effect is real. The Mandela effect is not real. It is a psyop operation. I mean, yeah, it's not real in the sense that it's actually happening. It's only real in the sense that it's a psyop that was created by the CIA in order to attempt to change history, right? The CIA is trying to see if they can change history to cover up, right, some of the things that they're doing that they don't want us to know about. But right, it's a giant psyop. The Mandela effect is not real. I mean, it's real that, in the sense that, yes, those issues, right, or those controversies, conflicts that people bring up, those are real. But those were created by the CIA in order to push forward this idea that that we can that the timelines change, so that way, right, they can, if they've done stuff in the past, they can say, oh, we're on a different timeline, that that criminal activity that we're involved in that we don't want people to know about, that didn't happen in this timeline, it happened in another timeline. The Mandela effect, right? But anyways, that is going to be the end. Thank you very much for making it to the end of this video. And like I said, I'm going to try and put up more, because I have so many documents, right? But, I also understand that it might, without videos, it might get a little boring. But look, there are enough people out there who are, showing videos of UFO sightings that, I don't think another one is going to add any new information. But I don't think a lot of people who are putting out UFO content are actually looking at documents, all of the different documents that have been released. Like there's the Adam and Eve story. That's supposedly has to do with the development of our civilizations. But anyways, I have a ton. I have a ton of documents that all have to do with UFOs, UAP, and the history of our so-called civilization. That I went to. Again, like this one, I'm going to stick up. The thumbnail is going to say UFO Video Addicts, like my previous ones, but know that eventually I'm going to be changing the name of this channel to Disclosure Documents 101 or something to that effect. But anyways, until next time, take care.